There's something most people have never considered. The human spine isn't a rigid structure. It's actually a chain of movement, an architecture that has been perfecting itself for millions of years, designed to allow two seemingly opposing forces to coexist: the stability we need to stand upright and the flexibility that allows us to bend, twist, run, and breathe. That these two properties can coexist in a single structure that typically measures between 60 and 75 centimeters in an adult is, from any scientific perspective, one of the most elegant solutions evolution has produced. For centuries, anatomists treated the spine as a simple support pillar. They saw it as the body's scaffolding, the axis around which everything else hung. This view wasn't wrong, but it was profoundly incomplete. Because the spine is not only the body's support, it is also its central information highway, the channel through which the signals that control every muscle, every organ, every conscious and unconscious sensation of the human organism travel. Understanding its anatomy is not just about studying bones. It's about understanding how the body communicates, protects, and moves everything that makes it function. The vertebral column consists of 33 vertebrae in childhood, although in adulthood this number is reduced to 26 functional structures, because several of the lower vertebrae fuse naturally during development. These vertebrae are distributed into 5 regions, with clearly differentiated anatomical and functional characteristics. The cervical region in the neck contains 7 vertebrae and is the most mobile of all. The thoracic region in the chest contains 12 vertebrae that articulate directly with the ribs, which limits their movement but provides them with a fundamental protective function. The lumbar region in the lower back has 5 vertebrae that are the largest and strongest in the entire spine, designed to support the combined weight of the entire torso. Below them is the sacrum, formed by 5 fused vertebrae that fit between the 2 pelvic bones, and the coccyx, an evolutionary vestige of what in our ancestors was a tail composed of 3 to 5 small, also fused, vertebrae. But what makes the spine truly remarkable is not the number of its parts, but the way those parts articulate with each other. Between each pair of adjacent vertebrae is an intervertebral disc, a structure that could be described as a highly engineered hydraulic cushion. Each disc has 2 fundamental components. On the outside, a fibrous ring of concentric layers of collagen fibers arranged at alternating angles. This configuration allows it to withstand compressive, tensile, and rotational forces simultaneously. Inside, a gelatinous, pulpy core, composed mainly of water and proteoglycans, acts as a deformable shock absorber, distributing loads evenly. When we bend forward, the core shifts slightly backward. When we jump, it absorbs the impact by compressing. When we twist, the fibers of the ring tighten in a coordinated manner to control movement and protect the interior. What most people don't know is that these discs have no direct blood supply in adulthood. They are avascular structures, meaning they don't receive oxygen or nutrients through capillaries. They survive through a process of diffusion, absorbing fluid and nutrients from adjacent vertebral bodies when the spine decompresses during rest and sleep. This is why we are 1 to 2 centimeters taller in the morning than at night. Throughout the day, the body's weight compresses the discs, expelling some of their water content. During the night, lying horizontally, the discs rehydrate. It's a mechanical process that occurs silently every 24 hours throughout our lives. This dependence on diffusion also explains why intervertebral discs are structures particularly vulnerable to aging and certain habits. As a person ages, the disc's ability to retain water gradually decreases. The nucleus pulposus loses hydration, the discs flatten, and the overall height of the spine can be noticeably reduced. This is the biological mechanism behind the well-documented phenomenon that older people are, on average, 1 to 3 centimeters shorter than they were in their younger adult years. But the architecture of the spine extends beyond its vertebrae and discs. What gives it true functional stability is the way the entire system is organized in the lateral plane. The 4 physiological curves of the spine. Viewed from the front, a healthy spine is straight. Viewed from the side, it presents a series of S-curves. A cervical curve, concave backward, called cervical lordosis. A thoracic curve, convex backward, called thoracic kyphosis. A lumbar curve, concave backward, known as lumbar lordosis. And finally, the sacral curve, which is convex backward. This S-shaped design is not an evolutionary accident. It is an engineering solution that multiplies the spine's capacity to absorb impacts. It has been calculated that a spine with its normal physiological curves can withstand compressive loads approximately 10 times greater than those a perfectly straight spine could tolerate. The curves act like springs, distributing the impact energy throughout the entire structure, rather than concentrating it in one spot. Within this bony architecture, protected by the canal formed between the vertebral bodies and the posterior arches of the vertebrae, runs the spinal cord. This cord of nerve tissue, approximately 45 centimeters long in adults and just over 1 centimeter in diameter. It is the direct extension of the brain to the rest of the body. It is not simply a transmission cable, it is an active processor. It contains neural circuits capable of generating motor responses without the brain's intervention, such as the reflex arc that pulls the hand away from a flame before the pain signal has even reached conscious awareness. Sensory information travels from the periphery to the cerebral cortex via its ascending tracts. Motor commands travel from the brain to the body's muscles via its descending tracts. These two flows of information coexist in opposite directions within the same spinal cord, organized along anatomically precise pathways. Pairs of spinal nerves emerge from the spinal cord, distributed along its entire length. 8 cervical pairs, 12 thoracic pairs, 5 lumbar pairs, 5 sacral pairs, and 1 coccygeal pair. Each pair of nerves exits through the intervertebral spaces and branches out to innervate specific regions of the body, providing both sensory and motor control. The organization is so systematic that physicians can identify with considerable accuracy which level of the spine is affected simply by assessing which region of the body has lost sensation or motor function. This neural mapping is one of the most powerful diagnostic tools in clinical neurology. The spine does not float in isolation within the body. It is anchored and controlled by an extraordinarily complex muscular network. Deep paravertebral muscles such as the multifidus and erector spinae act like tension cables that constantly adjust the position of each vertebra during movement. Many of these muscles are more like postural stabilizers than motors of movement. They activate in milliseconds, anticipating the body's movement even before it occurs. Electromyographic studies have shown that when we raise an arm, the deep muscles of the lumbar spine activate fractions of a second before the arm movement itself begins. The central nervous system anticipates the imbalance and compensates for it before it happens. This predictive synchronization is one of the most sophisticated phenomena of human motor control. There is a widespread belief that back pain is almost always the result of a visible injury, a herniated disc, a fracture, or advanced osteoarthritis. And while these conditions exist and are relevant, the clinical reality is considerably more complex. Imaging studies have consistently documented that a significant proportion of people without any back pain exhibit findings that would be considered pathological on an X-ray or MRI. Degenerated discs, disc protrusions, and joint changes. At the same time, many people with severe pain present with seemingly normal imaging. This has led researchers to recognize that chronic low back pain is a multidimensional phenomenon in which nervous system sensitization, psychological factors, soft tissue condition, and neuromuscular function contribute in varying proportions that differ from person to person. Research continues to explore the exact mechanisms of this complexity. Spinal aging follows a predictable trajectory at the tissue level. Intervertebral discs begin to dehydrate starting in the 3rd decade of life. The facet joints, which are the true joints between the posterior processes of adjacent vertebrae, can develop arthritic changes. The ligaments that run the entire length of the spine, the anterior longitudinal ligament, the posterior longitudinal ligament, and the ligamentum flavum, can thicken or calcify over time, reducing flexibility and, in some cases, the diameter of the spinal canal. This latter condition, known as spinal stenosis, can compress the nerves emerging from the spinal cord and cause neurological symptoms in the lower extremities. It is one of the most frequent causes of functional limitations in older adults. What makes the spine especially fascinating from an evolutionary perspective is that its current design is relatively recent in geological terms. Primates that adopted bipedalism, the ability to walk upright on 2 limbs, did so only a few million years ago. The hominid spine had to adapt a structure that originally evolved to distribute weight horizontally, like a bridge, to a completely new function, distributing weight vertically, like a tower. This transition was not seamless. The lumbar region, which now supports virtually the entire weight of the torso, arms, and head, is also the region with the highest incidence of clinical problems in humans. The global prevalence of low back pain is among the highest of all musculoskeletal conditions, and some researchers argue that this partly reflects the inherent stresses of a system still undergoing evolutionary optimization for bipedalism. Research in spinal biomechanics has advanced remarkably in recent decades, thanks to the combination of high-resolution imaging techniques, computational motion analysis, and finite element models that allow for the simulation of the forces acting on the spine in different postures and activities. These models have revealed that the loads on the lumbar spine are significantly greater than would be expected at first glance. In a seated position without back support, the pressure on the disc between the fourth and fifth lumbar vertebrae can reach considerably higher values than those recorded while standing. Leaning forward while seated significantly increases these loads. These findings have transformed ergonomic recommendations in work environments and generated a new understanding of why certain postural habits, sustained over time, can have consequences for the health of spinal tissues. Neuroscience has also begun to reveal layers of the spinal-brain relationship that go beyond simple signal transmission. The spinal cord possesses neuronal plasticity, the ability to reorganize itself in response to injury, motor learning, or chronic stimulation. In the context of spinal cord injury, this plasticity can be both beneficial when it contributes to the recovery of function and detrimental when it contributes to the development of chronic pain or spasticity. Epidural electrical stimulation, a technique involving the placement of electrodes on the surface of the spinal cord, has shown results in recent studies that, until a few years ago, would have been considered impossible. The partial recovery of voluntary movement in people with complete spinal cord injuries. Evidence in this field continues to accumulate, and the scientific community remains cautiously optimistic about its future therapeutic implications. There is no point in daily life when the spine stops working. While we sleep, it maintains its curvature and protects the spinal cord. While we breathe, its costovertebral joints allow for the expansion of the rib cage. As we walk, it absorbs the impact of each step, coordinates the movement of the hips and shoulders, transmits sensory information from the feet to the brain, and executes the continuous postural adjustments that prevent falls. When someone speaks, the paravertebral muscles stabilize the rib cage so that the respiratory muscles can precisely modulate airflow. Every bodily function, in one way or another, passes through the spine. And therein lies perhaps the most profound revelation its anatomy offers. The spine is not just a structure of the body. It is, in a sense, the body itself. It is the axis around which all human biology is organized. Its bones tell the story of how we learned to stand upright. Its discs speak of a system that breathes without lungs. Its nerves transmit the electrical language that transforms intention into movement. And its architecture, imperfect yet extraordinarily functional, is the clearest testament to the fact that evolution doesn't seek perfection, but rather the solution. A solution that, in the case of the human spine, has allowed our species to walk upright, think vertically, and observe the horizon with eyes that look forward. All of this is supported from within by the vertebral architecture that holds the human body together. Every time you breathe, every time you walk, every time you simply stand, there is a structure working silently to make everything else possible. The spine is not just bone and cartilage. It's the invisible axis of your biological existence, the bridge between your brain and your body, between intention and movement. Understanding it is understanding yourself in a way that very few people take the time to do. If this journey through one of the most extraordinary structures of human anatomy has taught you something new, something you didn't know before getting here, leave a like and join Anatomy Revealed, where each week the human body reveals another layer of its hidden design.